it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Teresa will do the prayer.
Almighty God, our rock and our salvation, we beg you to pour out your Holy Spirit upon our fractured nation. Heal the divisions that separate us and remove all obstacles to authentic unity. May you guide this great country of ours and lead our citizens to embrace one another as neighbors and fellow countrymen, created in your own image and likeness. Give us a fresh opportunity for renewal and true solidarity for the common good of our homeland. May we return to our true identity as a people of faith and charity. Help us to always remain one nation under you, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen. Thank you, Teresa. Okay. Susan Gingrich brought in a whole bunch of Make America Great hats. She paid $10 for them. She's auctioning them off for $5. So if you want to Make America Great hat, see Katie, $5, and you got to make a
be part of history.
Be part of history, she says. Okay, and we do have our guest speaker, Glenn Jacobs, and we also have Buddy Bradshaw, who will be talking, and he's going to talk about the Second Amendment. So you can either come up here, or I'll give you the microphone right where you are.
20 years ago, I went through right easy.
Thank you very much, Wayne. Speaking of just on the Second Amendment, come September, it'll be 5 years at the first Monday in September. It'll be 5 years since there has been a lift of the gun ban inside Loudoun County office buildings. And the most amazing thing is nobody's been shot. And, there's been no violence. There's been no turmoil. I haven't figured that out yet. They should run a story on that one. One quick story, I promise I'll be brief. I know y'all are here. We were at one of our classes we have to take and talking around, active shooter policies, active shooter scenarios. And I told one of the mayors there next to me from West Tennessee, he was on the other side of the fence when it comes to Second Amendment. He goes, well, what in the world would you do? I said, well, I could take seal it and then cover it and return fire. He goes, return fire? What do you mean? I said, well, we allow guns in our facilities. You can legally carry a gun in the United States. You can carry one in Loudoun County office buildings. Well, what in the world would that mean? I said, CSI'd have their hands full if anybody comes in our building. The Second Amendment is very dear. Well, they all are. The Second Amendment is one of the ones that's probably under attack more so than any. It's always the gun's fault. And, luckily our president, we're being able to, we don't hear it as much. And stand up, something we have to do as a people, as a country. And it just blows my mind how anyone could even entertain giving their weapons up, giving up their Second Amendment, giving up that right to bear arms. Because when the government's the only ones with the weapons, then we then become oppressed. The September 3rd, the Loudoun County Commission presented, the commission passed a resolution that declares Loudoun County a gun sanctuary county. All right. We will not take actions to impose or infringe upon the Second Amendment. We welcome gun owners, gun lovers, and we support the Second Amendment inherently. I wouldn't normally read a little bit of it, but I'll be honest with you, I fell asleep without my eye medicine, and I don't have my glasses either. And I apologize, but I will leave it laying around if anybody wants a copy. Anybody wants a copy, let me have your email. I'll be happy to email it to you. But it was, it's just, it says a little bit about where we live and what we stand for and what we strive to do. We are the only county in the state of Tennessee that I know of. I've heard a few that maybe not, but if we're not the only one, we're one of the very few strictly Republican, conservative controlled counties. From top to bottom, we are Republican elected. And if you look how that pays off, look at our county.
How long is it going to last, though? Because I noticed these states that have a Democratic rule, they're moving into Loudon. I have neighbors now who are from elsewhere, and I went and asked one of them. I said, "Are you a Democrat?" And the guy said, "Yes." And I'm thinking they're moving in here because it's low taxes, and I don't like it. I mean, they can come here and enjoy our local lifestyle, but they don't want, I mean, the Democrats are working at changing things the best they can.
The biggest threat to our Republican, I won't say dominant, our Republican control in Loudoun County is complacency. We have 30-some-odd thousand registered voters, and we might vote, if we're lucky, we'll vote maybe 20%. One of the elections, I forget what it was the only real race on it was a uncontested Senate race, state Senate race. We had 3% vote.
That's amazing.
You know, I missed, all I'm going to tell you, I missed one election when I was 22, working second shift at TRW, wore out, worked over all week. My dad said, "Did you go vote?" I didn't really have time, I'm tired. And he commenced to tell me he didn't serve for a year and a half in Korea for me to be tired, too tired to go vote. So I've never missed another one. But complacency is what we have to watch. You know, we've talked about the Republican Executive Committee, talked about, you know, registering high schoolers coming out. And, you know, I think everybody should exercise the right to vote, but at the same time, you got to be very careful. You know, we have several, very blatant liberal teachers who would love to
Hey, he was UT,
convert.
but he was UT math and computer, but the philosophy and liberal arts, they're the ones,
Absolutely.
and they taint them.
My oldest son is 18. You know, he was asked to leave a class in one of our local schools because they were singing the woe is me of illegal border crossings and all the bad things that were happening. And he sticks his hand up and goes, "Well, if they weren't trying to enter the country illegally, none of this would happen."
Yeah, that's right.
And Dellen, you called me into the room for a few minutes till we finished the discussion. And yeah, so. But anyway, I will leave this up here. I'm going to be very short-winded, especially for a politician. But if anybody's welcome to see it, if you want a copy, I'd be glad to have it. And, you know, any questions, I'll be around there. Thank you all very much.
Anyway, send it to me electronic, and I'll put it on our website so everybody will take a look at it.
Sure will, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I want the mask. Did Bob leave? Yeah.
There you go.
Oh, there it is. You want to talk about Jason Dance?
I'm gonna let my wife
Oh, okay.
take that.
Jeez.
Always tell me let's get on. No, I really don't want to say a lot about it. Most of you, I'm sure, are aware that we have, that our school superintendent here in Loudoun County has been suspended. There's sort of been a lot of ongoing controversy and that kind of things, and things that he's allegedly done and that kind of thing. It's a very difficult situation, I think. I think we need maybe some new direction in the school and all of that, but the last BOE meeting, they tried to vote to terminate him, and it was a 5-5 vote, so it failed. So then they decided to vote for suspension with pay, which passed 7-3, but that's contingent on negotiating with the attorney to buy out his contract. And I believe he has 3 years left, buddy, something like that.
Count salary, benefits, vacation time, sick time, don't get me why salary that much has sick time, vacation time, but nonetheless, it's going to be somewhere around close to $700,000.
Yeah, so it's a steep hill to climb if they go the buyout route. And also, it's something we all need to pray about. It concerns me, and I don't even have children in the school system anymore. But we're not unlike a lot of other counties that are struggling in our school systems sometimes. So just prayerfully think about that and continue to watch it. You know, we'll see, because who knows how this will play out for our county. And hopefully, like our mayor said, hopefully we will wind up spending $700,000 to get it fixed.
Yeah, it would have been nice if there had been just outright firing and then let him do what he needed to do. But that hits the school budget and the county budget. That really hurts. Okay, next we have Pandora that will be talking about the property tax.
Last night, a few of us went to the budget. We have an opportunity as citizens to give feedback on the proposed budget. And there were several people there last evening with comments about the proposed budget for our county. And there were a lot of law enforcement officers there because their budget is the one of contention, so to speak. Everybody, as we know, we love our sheriff very much. However, his proposed budget is not something that I love personally. What's happening is, as you know, we built a jail, and we should have had more foresight as far as what it was going to cost to run the jail. Nobody really wanted to deal with that because the jail was just such a big thing. But there are several counties that have built big jails and have not opened them because of how much they cost to operate. So we're in a situation where our sheriff met with our budget committee, and he had requested 36 additional jailers, new additional jailers, 15, hold on a second, I hate these glasses, but he wanted 6 extra patrol deputies, and our budget committee negotiated with him and agreed to give him 15 additional jailers and 3 additional deputies and a car, new car, and all of his people to receive the 2% increases that everybody else in the county was going to receive. And he walked away with the deal. But he circled back around and said, I want to go back in with my original request of 36 new jailers, 6 new deputies, and I want salary increases that were exorbitant. So we dialed in a little bit into some of those pay increases, and a gentleman from Greenback pointed out to everybody that our deputies that we love that have dangerous jobs are actually making $5,000 or $6,000 more than the Blount County deputies make already. And then we're also paying more than Knox County deputies are being paid. Now, we're always being compared in a beauty match to Lenoir City. But Lenoir City is like my rich aunt. You cannot run with that money, okay? You have to live within your means. They get they get millions of dollars from LCUB that we will never see. So you can't compare us along those lines. But we do lose deputies to Lenoir City for the money. So anyway, basically, the sheriff agreed last night that he would go back to the budget committee and try and hash this out again so that we don't encounter a, are you ready, 12 to 14% property tax increase.
Wow.
That's how much money we're talking. This is a massive amount of humanity to run this jail, and then those increases. So our county commissioner in Tellico Village is Henry Cullen. He sits on the budget committee. All of you that have questions or comments, I have his contact information. The actual county commission meeting will be June the 24th at the Loudoun County Courthouse Annex behind the courthouse that burned down, as we all know. And that is the place where they will vote on the budget and set the tax rate. So if we don't have a successful negotiation with the sheriff, you're going to look at anywhere from a 12% increase because they would use some of the fund balance, or if they stay away from the fund balance, you're looking at 14%. So just to do a little math, I was told by somebody that the average property value in Tellico Village was $450,000 roughly. So your taxes on a $450,000 home are about $2,029. If it goes up 14%, you're looking at $2,313. So it's quite a bit of money, and everybody wants the sheriff's group to be sufficiently funded. What we don't want to have is overfunding, and we don't want to have unfair funding for that particular department. So anyway, that is, come to the meeting on the 24th. You can say something there. You're always welcome to speak as a member of the public and express your concern. I know some people are very nervous about speaking in public. I don't like it, but sometimes you just kind of have to step out of your comfort zone and say what's on your mind and your concerns. And I know some people were nudging me like, gee, thanks for saying something, because I'm afraid to say it, you know. There were a lot of law enforcement officers there. Of course, they're engaged. They want these raises. Of course they do, right? But you want them to be paid appropriately, not too much. So anyway, that's 6 o'clock on the 24th. If you can come, say what you need to say, we would appreciate it, and stay involved in politics. Like our mayor just said, don't let apathy rule the day. That's something as important as this. Thank you.
Also, tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the county office building is the budget committee meeting. And that's probably where most of the rubber will meet the road, because they'll make a decision as to what they're going to be presenting to the board at that particular meeting. So a good meeting to go to will actually be the one tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. That'll be something that anybody can go to, and love to see you there. I plan on being there. Now we're going to have Ray Morgan talk about the Constitution. And don't forget to go to our CrossCountyPatriots.com. That has our minutes. It also has Ray's talk on there. And while that's happening, we're going to have Katie pass the basket for the donation. So hopefully we can keep the organization going with the little funds there.
Hi, Wayne didn't introduce the new guys, but there's a couple of new guys over here. Welcome. Anybody else new tonight? Okay, thank you for coming. For you newbies, every meeting I try to do a little blurb on the Constitution just to educate us a little bit. Today I'm going to talk about or focus on some somewhat popular federal government programs. And again, ask the question, are they constitutional? How many of you have children or grandchildren that have watched Sesame Street? Yeah, almost everybody, right? How about National Public Radio? How many people listen to NPR? A lot of them do. Okay. Although if you do, you know, what kind of slanted news are you getting?
Oh, you're getting very slanted.
Very slanted to the left, right? Well, who pays for these programs?
We do. NPR.
Yeah, exactly. Now, every once in a while you see they will do fundraisers, but basically they get funded by federal grants, which means our tax dollars. So again, let's look at the Constitution. Let's see if that's allowed in the Constitution. You go again to Article 1, Section 8, and you guys should have that one memorized by now. Article 1, Section 8. And it's actually Clause 8. It shows one of the powers of Congress is to promote the progress of science and useful arts. Okay, I'll stop there. So it sounds perfectly legitimate for the federal government to fund shows like Sesame Street and programs like NPR, right? That promotes the useful arts, correct? Well, how many have worked at Oak Ridge National Labs or have anything to do with Oak Ridge out there? Okay. That promotes the progress of science to a T, doesn't it? Right? So these programs, or all these things, seem to fall into the authority of Congress for funding, right? Or wrong? Well, guess what? I forgot to read the whole clause. Listen to the whole clause. What it says is to promote the progress of science and art and useful arts by securing for limited times to authors and inventors the exclusive right to their respective writings and discoveries. Okay, that changes something, doesn't it? To promote science and arts is the purpose, but what's the means? Okay, what is the means? What are they talking about? What are the founders talking about?
Patent and trademark.
Patents and copyrights, exactly. So what they're saying is we need to promote these sciences and arts by giving patents and copyrights to the inventors, the ones who did it. Okay, they did not mean at all, oh, we're going to fund anything that sounds like art or sounds like science. Okay, that's not what they intended. However, today, that's what we get. Do we need NPR to have a radio station in this country? Obviously not. There's hundreds of them in Knoxville. We don't need NPR. So what are we getting? We're getting, basically, our tax dollars going to fund the left's propaganda, which is really what you get on NPR. Now but that's not really the worst of it. You know, if you go on and on about, if you've ever dug into what grants go out there, how many of you ever heard, that this was a few years back, but this big grant that was given to this guy that produced this art, and the art was the cross of Christ in a glass of urine.
Yeah.
Okay. And we could probably go on for an hour talking about instances like that, but it's like, wait a minute, why are we funding that as a government? There's no need. First of all, if it was real art, there would be plenty of consumers out there that would be willing to buy it. The government doesn't need to fund it. So that's, you know, we don't need to be giving grants for trash like that. And even if it was good, it's still taxpayer dollars. I mean, again, why pay money that a consumer would buy normally anyway? Well, what about Oak Ridge? Of course, the initial purpose of Oak Ridge was for World War II to create the atomic bomb. And of course, I can't argue with the constitutionality of that at all. I mean, there's tons of things in Section 8 that talk about our military and doing what we need to do to win wars. But since it has morphed into the Department of Energy, what about it now? Okay, what we have now is taxpayer dollars being funneled into alternate energy sources, for one, like solar and wind, that don't really have any economic viability unless they're subsidized by the government. So is that a good thing? Now, I'm not necessarily against funding for that, but what I'm saying is it's unconstitutional. If we really want to do it, let's change the Constitution to make it legal instead of just doing it. Okay? Our history has plenty of examples of government intervention or government subsidies into the sciences or into inventions, etc. It always shows that the free market always does a better job. Anytime the government is involved, it's a disaster. Now, I'll just give you a couple examples from way back when. We could probably talk about a lot of examples today, but let me just talk about some examples from the past. Everybody knows that Robert Fulton built the first steamship, right? Okay. What you probably don't know is what happened after that. Fulton lobbied the state of New York for a monopoly to make a run from New Jersey to New York City, carry passengers back and forth between those two sides. The state of New York gave him that monopoly. Okay, so what did he do? Well, he started running back and forth, and he was charging a pretty high rate. I think, if I remember correctly, it was like $15 a person, which was a lot of money back then. So he's running back and forth. Well, along comes this guy named Cornelius Vanderbilt. Okay, he builds his own steamship, and he sees what's going on, and first of all, he doesn't like it. So he starts doing a run himself in violation of the New York law, the New York monopoly, but he's undercutting Fulton the whole time. Well, eventually, Fulton's going going, losing money because he's losing all his customers, and he takes it to court, and the Supreme Court, rightly so, says that's a violation of the Commerce Clause. States can't do that. And so that really, in essence, put Fulton out of business. But at the same time, a bunch of other competitors started coming up. Well, Vanderbilt just kept innovating and innovating. He kept dropping his price from, I think it started at 10 to 5 to 2 to 1. He finally started giving free rides across the river. And the way he made his money is he sold sandwiches and drinks on the steamship. Okay? So he was efficient enough. Well, guess what? His competitors didn't like it, so they bought him out. They paid him off, said, go somewhere else. So he takes the money and goes somewhere else. He does the same thing with several other routes, and also a route that was going across the Atlantic between England and the U.S., that he was actually competing against another government-subsidized steamship company. They were getting money to run the mail. And they were subsidized, and Vanderbilt said, I can do it better. So he built better ships, and he basically kept undercutting that route until they went out of business. He did the same thing on the route from the East Coast to California during the gold rush. The government had given two companies basically a contract to run the mail from the East Coast to California through the Panama Canal. So Vanderbilt says, well, I can do it better. Well, these other two companies were getting $900,000 a year. This was back in the 1850s, 1860s, 50s. And it was like, it's an outrageous sum. Plus they were charging $600 per person for the passage from the East Coast to California. Well, Vanderbilt starts doing it himself. He came up with another route. He actually did another canal through, I think it was Honduras, but anyway, he built another canal. And he kept slowly undercutting till he was charging $100 per person instead of $600. And he was carrying the mail for free. So finally, the government wised up, and because of Vanderbilt, they canceled all those subsidies, okay? Because they saw, well, it's just not working. Well, all of what Vanderbilt did was to just help the whole industry itself, just all his innovations and stuff, helped the whole industry. Well, let's consider another industry, the railroads. The Union Pacific and Central Pacific Railroads. Everybody makes a big deal about how they connected the country at Promontory Point in Utah, right? Yep. Well, no one hears what happened after that. Well, both those companies, in fact, what was happening was that the federal government was giving land grants to all these railroads, basically giving them free land where they could run their railroads, and they were paying them by the mile to lay track, okay? And that's how they, connected so fast. Well, so they were paying them by the mile to lay track. Guess what happened? Well, they cut corners, tried to lay as much track as possible because they're getting paid by the mile, right? And so after the big deal about connecting the country, both those two railroads went bankrupt. In fact, every railroad that took government subsidies went bankrupt at least once, if not several times. Okay? So that was the result of the government subsidies. Well, compare that with the Great Northern Railroad, a guy named James J. Hill. He took no government aid whatsoever. He ran his railroad from Chicago all the way out to the Pacific Northwest, Seattle, etc. But as he did it, he built his track right, which the other guys didn't, and he really studied the routes to get the best route so he could do it the most efficiently. And of course, it took him longer, but he was very successful. He was one of the only railroads never to go bankrupt, okay, while he was running it. And he took no government subsidies whatsoever. So, without the help of the government. So, if you want to know more about stories like this, and there's several of them, there's a book called The Myth of the Robber Barons by a guy named Bert Folsom. really good. You can expand on these stories. But the bottom line is that the free market always does it better than when the government gets involved, either through monopolies, subsidies, or whatever else. So we should watch out about that. Now, when you look at the Science and Arts Clause, compared to all the other government programs, you know, they're fairly insignificant because, you know, not a ton of dollars go, you know, dollar-wise, you know, compared to some of the other giveaway programs that we're doing, it's not that significant. But it's still a violation of the principles of limited enumerated powers in the Constitution that have been eroded over the years. And it's very clear and plain. I mean, how clear can it get? It's buy copyrights and patents, not just, oh, here, you want to do some art here, you want to do some science here, here's some money, grants. You know, today you get government grant for doing anything, and that's not right. So we need to be diligent to oppose any government overreach wherever it occurs. Okay. Questions, comments?
That sounds like the Democrat agenda. They're going to give everything.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, that's how you plan.
Didn't we tell something to NPR or threaten it at one point?
I think it's been threatened. I'm pretty sure they're still getting money. They're still getting funds. They wouldn't still be on the air if they weren't getting government money. So who's going to listen?
Right.
Anything else? Any other questions? Comments?
I'm curious about money still going to Planned Parenthood and being against that, and you know, what's the situation with that?
Well, I mean, the Democrats are in control of the House, and they're going to continue to fund it. You know, it's a battle right now, but the bottom line is, even though we have so many congressmen and senators that stand up and say, I'm pro-life, they still allow it to be funded. They still get backdoor money, and they'll say, oh, it's not for abortions, it's for all our other services.
Yeah.
Well, you know, if you're getting money, it's funding your abortions, period. So don't get me started on that one. I'm not sure of that one.
Yeah, both of them. Susan says she doesn't want to say anything. Remember this day. That's okay. Now we're going to be introducing our guest speaker, Glenn Jacobs. Many of you know him as the Knox County Mayor, Knox City Mayor, but Knox County Mayor. Just like Buddy is the Loudoun County Mayor, and we have a city mayor. And he won his election pretty good, and he's very conservative, and would like to find out what he's going to be doing as the new Knox County Mayor. So. And I'll go around with the microphone, and you can ask him questions after.
Sure. Can you all hear me if I don't use the mic? Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like to take your jacket off too.
That would be one. I will end up sweating. Yeah. Ronald Reagan used to tell a joke, a little off color. Said that there's a Republican candidate canvassing out in the rural areas, and he comes up to it's actually a very liberal area, but he comes up to a farmer out in the field. He's like, I'd love to talk to some folks around here. Can you help me out? And the guy's like, well, I'm a Democrat, but I'm open-minded. I'm sure I can get some of my friends and neighbors to come over. He's like, I don't really have any place for you to stand, though, you know, where you can talk to people, except that there's a pile of horse manure, cow manure over there. Have you heard this one?
Yeah.
All right. So, by the way, just save his last until I get to the punchline. But anyway, so he's like, you can talk. You can stand up on there and talk. So sure enough, the guy gets some people gathered around, and the Republican candidate gets on top of all the cow manure, and he just gives an awesome speech. Just awesome speech. Converts a whole lot of people. right? They all walk away, and they're all Republicans, not all these Democrats. And he climbs down, and the farmer's like, that's amazing. That is the first time I have ever heard a Republican speak. And the candidate said, yeah, you ain't kidding. That's the first time I ever spoke from a Democratic platform. And Ray, I really enjoyed your talk. Have you ever read Not Yours to Give by Davy Crockett?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you guys have. I saw last week you had Charity in the Government. It's a great essay by, all of us remember Davy Crockett as frontiersman, but he was also a U.S. congressman. And I'm not going to get into the story, but it's very good. Check it out. An example I like to give to when we're talking about free market versus government. It's amazing to me that the government is so involved in the healthcare industry. And that was true even before the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare. Huge amounts of money the government's spending. And what's happening with our healthcare system? It just keeps on getting more and more and more expensive. Amazing thing is these things. Cell phones. About every 6 months, they double in their capacity, they go down in price. They're regulated to some extent, but not very much. So you compare the technologies and the things that aren't regulated to the things that are, and you certainly see that. On the one hand, you see quality, and quality go up, price go down when the free market's involved. On the other side, when government's involved, you see the price go up while the quality goes down. So I could sat here and listen all night to you if you want to get back up. People ask me what has surprised me the most since I've been in office. And it's not really a surprise, but this has been very reinforced to me, is you hear a lot of people when they're candidates and when they're out campaigning that I'm a conservative. I'm a fiscal conservative. And then when you actually see them in office, and I've witnessed this firsthand, all of a sudden that whole conservatism deal goes out the window because they've got the power of the purse now. And the driving impetus behind their thoughts is not saving taxpayers' money and trying to use tax money as effectively as possible. The driving impetus is like, well, I can do some really good things, and government can do things that only government can do, just got to give us more money. Yeah. And unfortunately, again, I've seen that. You have, when people get into power, whatever principles that they talked about on a campaign trail leave. And that's truly unfortunate. And a buddy talked about complacency being a great threat. I actually, there's another threat. When we look at the political spectrum and we look at the far left, you know, and their crazy ideas, which economically could never work, but certainly they have some crazy ideas. But I don't think they're as big a threat as the people that sit in the middle and don't have any principles and even don't know what they believe. Or politicians who campaign one way and then get into office and completely abandon those principles. As you were talking about with the Republicans who might support an organization like Planned Parenthood. That is, to me, the real threat and the reason that we have seen our freedoms and liberties eroded over the centuries is because people have not stood on principle and they have the opportunity to do that. So when we're talking about complacency, it's not only the voters, but it's also elected officials that you all have to keep in check. Ma'am, you talked about people moving here from other areas, and it's ironic. My wife is a realtor, and one of the things that she will do when someone contacts her, especially from certain yeah. Well, that's the thing. Is, you know, people will contact her and she'll be like, "Who did you vote for? Are you a Republican or Democrat?" Because there really is in our country. I believe that there's a real struggle going on now. And it's where economic power is the strongest. And of course, for many years, it was in the Northeast. And what has happened now is the economic power is coming to the South. Because you look at Tennessee, and we were just named actually the best run state in the country. We had, I believe, the 4th lowest state and local tax burden in the country. The state has no debt. We're a right to work state. We're a low regulation state. And you see people taking their companies from places like California. Did you know, I saw this the other day actually on Facebook. I'm sorry to digress, this blew my mind. Someone had a picture of a stand-up poster at the Department of Motor Vehicles in California. Do you know you have to have a license to work on your car in California? No. Yeah, I swear, it said that if you...
On your own car?
On your own car. Yeah, and it was like basically where the snitch deals, right? If you see someone working on a car and they're unlicensed, you're supposed to report it because, and it lists some reasons, because they could strip the parts away and sell them illegally. You know, they could, I guess, do an unsafe job. Or, of course, the fluids could get into the ground. But, yeah, that is the honest to goodness truth. I mean, they're literally cannibalizing themselves at this point. So we're seeing people and companies move here because of the economic freedom that we have here. And California, the Northeast, they're really pricing themselves out in the market. That's a good thing for us. As county mayor, as Knox County mayor, I believe that my most important priority is ensuring that we have a low tax environment, a low regulation environment, a business friendly environment, so that we can retain and attract good paying, high quality jobs. The thing that I do worry about, in all seriousness though, is as we win this economic tussle that is currently going on, will we become a victim of our own success? As people bring the ideas that they're trying to escape from with them. And then that really is an issue, and again, that's up to you guys to help mitigate that. Because the reason that people are moving here is because we have low taxes. It is because we don't have owner's regulation. It's because we value property rights. And it's funny, a friend of mine who was also a realtor, one day he was out and he was talking, lady selling her house, she was from Michigan. And she said, oh gosh, all these poor people and all this stuff, the government should be doing something about it. And I go to church and they're always asking me for money at church to do stuff. And he's like, where are you from? You Michigan? Yeah, you pay a lot more tax there, yeah. It's like, okay, well what happens in Michigan is the government takes your money to do that. What happens here is the churches ask for your money so that they can help do that. So if you want to raise your taxes, fine. But if you want to support your church or charity, it's a better way to go, and that's why you moved here. But that is, to me, the most important thing that I can do, is ensure that our kids and grandkids have good economic opportunity. When I look at our education system, we have failed in government-funded public education over the past few decades by telling every single child that in order to be successful, they have to go to college. For some kids, this is true. I see this in my own family. I have one brother and one sister. My sister's a rocket scientist. She worked at NASA, and she's a rocket scientist. She has an undergraduate degree in mathematics, another undergraduate degree in archaeology. Now she has a PhD in history. My brother just didn't like book learning. Wasn't good at it, didn't like it anyway. He liked to work with his hands. When he was 9 years old, I remember mom's yelling at him because he's got his watch taken apart and spread out all over the kitchen table. So he's like, okay, and he puts it back together and has it work just fine. That's what he was doing, is trying to figure out how it worked. He's a very gifted mechanic. At that time, we still had a robust VOTEC program, and he would spend half the day studying auto mechanics. And that's what he does. Very gifted auto mechanic. My sister, she's very good at what she does. But my brother, if he can fix it, it's got moving parts, whether it's a watch, whether it's a road grader. My sister's a rocket scientist, and I don't know if she could put gas in her car sometimes. But we need both people, especially when we're looking at where our economy is going in the global economy in the 21st century. It's very tech heavy, very tech heavy. So we have to have those people that can work in that sector of the economy, those sectors of the economy. For every 4 skilled tradespeople who are leaving the workforce right now, though, there's only one person to take their place. If you want to know where the opportunities are, they're in the trades. I have 2 daughters. They're both marvelous kids. They're both nurses with advanced degrees. But when they were in high school, and I always, you need to date the kid that makes a really good grades, probably going to go to medical school, okay, girls? Now I'd be like, you need to find the guy that's going to be a plumber, because he's going to make a lot of money. But it's true. I mean, if you all find a good plumber, you know, you about have to keep him on retainer at this point, right? Because you ain't going to see him again. But when we're looking at our education system, there has to be a pivot. And we are making that, but it's a slow process because, you know, especially with Knox County schools, because they're so big and they're very bureaucratic. You know, that's just big bureaucracy, and they'll admit that, you know. But they understand the need for CTE, and that's the way of the future. On the other side of things, and we're looking at STEM and, you know, the tech portion of our education, we have to emphasize that as well. Because for me, those are where the jobs are going to be. And I believe that if we have a skilled workforce and we build that, that's what companies look for. And that's when they're going to come. This is a wonderful place to live. East Tennessee is just, you know, I've been all around the country, I've been all around the world. I moved here 25 years ago, I never left, because this is the best place for me in the world. And we're going to have more people coming in for that reason. That's a good thing. But we also have to make sure that we keep the integrity of our area as well, and what makes us so great. So, but that's what, as mayor, you know, there's other things. We're talking about charity. I just took a lot of heat with our budget because the county had a program called the Indigent Care Program. It's completely misnamed. But people that, extremely low-income people, we were reimbursing hospitals for their medical bills. And I mean, I feel I feel terrible about the whole thing, but, you know, basically we went to the hospitals and say, hey, can we cut this? And hospitals weren't happy, but we came to an agreement of what they would accept. And we were able to make a significant cut in that area. And it does more than actually for the indigent. It's also what we use to pay for our prisoner health care. I'm sure Buddy's going to tell you all this. You know, when we look at taxes and we look at all the burdens that are placed on local government, it's very difficult. Okay, in Knox County, we're paying over $1 million a year in medical costs for prisoners at the detention center, and we are legally mandated to pay that. What enrages me is if someone comes to the detention center and they're in custody and they have to have an emergency procedure, guess who pays for it? Even if they have private insurance, even if they have TennCare, whatever, we pay for that. You know, there are so many mandates that are placed on us by the feds and by the state, and I love our state government, but sometimes what they do is like, hey, we're going to cut taxes, and they go, wait, we got a lot of that, and you know, you guys basically what they'll do is they'll shift the burden onto us. So, you know, please understand that we do the best that we can, but a lot of times we're under these mandates. In Knox County, we have an $853 million budget. Probably 95% of that is really gone before I make one decision about where we're going to spend money. Because we have a huge school budget, sheriff budget, debt service. Those are the things that, you know, basically there's a little bit of negotiation as you guys are going through, but, you know, still, it's pretty much spent. Then we have constitutional services that have provided, courts and that sort of thing. You know, you're not even getting to roads and all that. So a lot of it's already spent. But you know, I try to make a small cut. You know, and there's a lot of pushback, and there's pushback from people that said they were conservatives. You know, what they weren't looking at is we're creating a new office called the Office of Faith-Based Initiatives to work with charities, to work with the churches, to try to help people not rely on the government for charity, but to have the nonprofits and the church sector step into that void. So that's another thing that we're doing and very excited about doing. I believe that as a government, we can take a lot more advantage of my position, using the bully pulpit to get the community involved in some various issues and problems. That way we're not spending the taxpayers' money. You know, it seems in Knox County anyway, and I'm sure it's true other places as well, everybody operates in their own little silo. And we're very strong if we can knock down those silos and all work together. And that's what that office is trying to do. I'm a big believer in public-private partnerships. I'm a big believer in trying to utilize nonprofits as opposed to government charity. But again, for me, it's economic development. It's a world-class education system. Two most important things. Other things that we're working on, but those are the two most important things for me. So, do you have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
I was wondering, what is your take on the educational system in Knox County in terms of propagandizing the students to leftist ideas?
I mean, I know that goes on everywhere, you know. I think that also veers away from, you know, if we're looking at schools, what is school's real mission? It's to prepare kids for the workforce, prepare kids for life. And I still try to figure out why some of the things, you know, that go on. I mean, for instance, you know, there just is a big, not a big blow up at the Board of Education last week. They had some folks and had a petition about sex ed. And I'm like, you know, and controversy. I'm like, I can fix the controversy. Get rid of sex ed. That should be something that's taught at home, you know, to me. You know, and that's the issue, is instead of concentrating on things that kids need to be successful in life, skills, you know, we get into these other areas. That goes, I will tell you though, I don't think that's as bad in Knox County as it would be in other areas of the state or the country, because I know some teachers that are, you know, pretty good conservative folks, but, you know, it just doesn't go on.
Yeah. Speaking of schools, in my opinion, the reason why public schools are failing is because exactly that, it's a public monopoly. And when you look at fundamentally who is responsible for teaching the kids, it's, as you said, the parent, not the state. You know, my thing is that every parent should be able to send their kid wherever they want to go, and so call it a tax refund, call it a voucher, whatever. But that would introduce free market, and I think schools would pop up everywhere to meet the demands of the parents. And anyway, that's my question is, would you support something like that?
Yeah, I think school choice is a good thing. There's an institution over in Raleigh, North Carolina. It's called the Thales Institute, and it's run by a gentleman. His company has a huge market share of industrial kitchen exhaust equipment, and he started their private schools. And I don't like saying the word private because, you know, anybody can go. You just have to pay, you know, tuition. But his tuition is about $5,000 a year. It is, and it's a very high, you know, it's a very high quality education. And I'm interested in that because I want to see the model. They have about 3,000 students now in the Raleigh area, and I think that's, you know, that's the model is low cost private, you know, and how do you get there? You know, because you hear other arguments, you know, about, you know, the problem with vouchers and that sort of thing is, you know, they end up, you know, taxpayer money going to private institutions. You know, I get that as well. But I think what you have to do first and foremost is introduce competition into it, and that's going to have to be low cost competition. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Mayor. Good to see you. And I wanted to make a comment about the Loudoun County Second Amendment sanctuary. You know, it's good to say you're a Second Amendment sanctuary, but unless you're going to enforce that law against state and federal agents, it's really just a piece of paper. So as someone who's never going to surrender their firearms, I know you don't have any police authority, but I'm interested, maybe you have aspirations and you'd like to make an announcement. Wayne would enjoy that, I'm certain. And, I'm interested in your understanding and your thoughts on the extreme risk protection orders and the so-called red flag laws, and what you think of those. One was introduced at the state level, in which the police can take the firearms from someone who's broken no law, and Ray would know more about this than I do, but that would essentially eradicate the 6th, 5th, 4th, and 2nd Amendments, and change jurisprudence in the United States forever. So I'm interested in what you think about that, generally, since you don't have police authority as a county mayor. Thank you, sir, for coming.
The Second Amendment says shall not be infringed.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's very clear to me. So, you know, it's funny because talk about reasonable gun control or reasonable anything. You get in a lot of trouble when you start using the term reasonable.
Yeah.
Because then basically it's a very subjective term. So no, I think all those attempts to infringe upon the Second Amendment, you know, it all ends up in the same place. It's just a slippery slope.
Common sense gun laws.
That's the one, right?
Thank you again for coming. I've got a question about how you make a decision as an executive. Being a fiscal conservative, a moral conservative, when you're making a decision for the county, are you looking at it from the standpoint of, okay, a request has come in for this. What does it do to make government smaller? What does it do to make government more efficient? And is it helping any of the 3 mandates you have as the mayor, which is highways, education, and whatever the third one is? I mean, you kind of put things through a screener mentally. I mean, because you guys get hit from every direction. Everybody wants money.